18 years it's been. 18 years since I've been searching for Hollow Knight content to make. I looked everywhere. I have done everything. I have scoured every single corner of the planet. I even tried killing my cat. But all to no avail. I'm still out there, looking for content. Looking for the views.
Hey yo, welcome to Chili's.
Hey, what Hollow Knight video should I record? Tell me! I'm still the one with the knife, Sammy. Give me content. It's Glade. Not sponsored. Can you Hey Homer. Fetch.
Oh, he's gone.
Wait a minute, no. My hands, they're covered in blood of my enemy. Right there. Where's the content?
How do they do it? How do they get all the views? How do they get all the subscribers? I need to know. I need to know the truth.
Oh my god, that was so bitter.
I need to know their secrets. Let's see what's popular. Let's see what people are making on the internet. Guide. Hey yo! Guide. More guide. Hello everybody. First and foremost, it's me, your host, Primacon for today, and I'm here to tell you how to get good at Hollow Knight. Now let me get something out of the way first. Who is this guide for? Who is this video for? Basically, if you're relatively new to the franchise and maybe you have played the game once or you're still on your first playthrough and you see people like Fireborn, Rusty, Primacon be super good at the game, and you're like, hey, I want to do that, I want to be good, I want to be decent, then this video is for you because I'm going to give you some tips. And even if you are a veteran player, you probably know these things and agree with these things, but I'm going to give you some tips to get you from beginner to intermediate. If you follow these tips, you're no longer a casual Hollow Knight player, whatever that means. You'll find your gameplay improved by a shit ton, okay? Also, the new YouTube meta is asking people to subscribe at the start of the video rather than the end of the video, so hit that subscribe button, gamers.
Why are we still here?
Let me start off this guide list by telling you, using your nail is a fucking scam. So, the first 3 tips are gonna be based around spells, okay? Tip number 1. Let's talk about some settings that you should have if you want to improve at the game. The most important thing is to use quick cast. So if you're a casual player and you're new to the game, you probably use the circle button or the B button, depending on your controller, to use spells. The same button that you use to heal. You use that for spells because that's what the game teaches you. For some reason, the game doesn't teach you the objectively better way to cast spells, which is quick casting. By default, this is going to be on your bumper. Also, now that I'm talking about this, I should give a quick disclaimer that this is for controller only. I am not a keyboard player, so I have no clue how keyboard settings work. But anyway, by default, quick casting is on a bumper, right bumper, and you want to change that with dream nail. So your dream nail is usually triangle or Y. You want to switch those around and make quick cast on your face button and your dream nail on your bumper. So the reason you do that is because it allows you to dash and then immediately cast a spell. This lets you do some stuff like fireball skips. If you want to get into speedrun, this lets you maneuver around boss attacks and immediately punish with a spell. And if you're wondering what quick casting does, is it basically shoots out a fireball as soon as you press the button rather than as soon as you release the button. Now you might be thinking that, hey, who cares? That's like such a small time window, right? But those frames that you save matter a lot. If you have ever played a fighting game before, you know the importance of frames. So getting into the habit of using quick cast to use your spells instead of the heal button is a very good first step to improving your Hollow Knight gameplay. And at first, it's gonna feel a bit unnatural and weird, but the more you get into it, you'll be enabled to use regular spell casting. Like once you get used to quick cast, there's no way you're gonna go back. This list will not include the usage of any mods because I want it to be inclusive to people who play on consoles, people who play on a Switch and stuff like that. You can't use mods in those, so I'm not gonna tell you to go get a debug mod and make save states and use that to practice your gameplay and get better. That's kind of cheesing it. So I'm just gonna keep it to things that are in-game that you can do by default without any additional software or help. Second thing is we're gonna mainly focus on improving your early game and mid game, because once you get better at that, it translates very well over to late game. Because by late game, when you're into God Home and you're doing all the pantheons, you have so much health, so much nail damage that it's easy to fall into some bad habits and caveats, and it's tougher to improve then. So I'm mainly going to be focusing on early parts of the game. While we are at the topic of settings, I want you to make sure that your frame rate is set to as high as possible, your resolution is matching your monitor, you have VSync off, just some general things so that you have less input lag and your gameplay is super smooth and everything is awesome. Everything is cool and you're part of a team. Now, this leads very nicely to point number 2, which is get using spells. Spells in Hollow Knight are overpowered as fuck if you know what you're doing, especially in early and mid game. Like, the nail just does not compare. Sure, when you have quick slash and unbreakable strength and pure nail and you have a million health to tank, other than that, you want to get using spells. A really good indication of someone who's new to Hollow Knight or who's a really casual player is they just don't use spells because they're afraid of taking damage and they usually save all their soul for healing. Which is fine, but you want to get out of that little habit. You want to start using spells offensively. So when you start the game and you have your base nail, it only does 5 damage per hit. And it goes up by 4 every time you upgrade your nail. So it starts with 5 and then it does 9, 13, 17, and 21 damage respectively, right? But the very first base spell you get, the Vengeful Spirit, it deals 15 damage, which is the same as hitting your enemies 3 times with the nail. What's fun though is you can get a charm at very early on in the game called Shaman Stone. This upgrades your spells, but it also increases the size of your Shade Soul, which potentially makes it very easy to double hit enemies. Double hitting is basically when you fireball when an enemy is jumping back. That way they take damage twice, one initially and once during their jump. So potentially by just the press of one single button, you have dealt 40 damage because Shaman Stone upgrades your spell damage from 15 to 20, so double hitting means you're doing 40 damage. Now think about it, your nail is only doing 5. So just by press of a button, you're doing the same damage as hitting them 8 times with a nail. That's how strong spells can be if used correctly at early game. But it's not just about using spells for power and damage, obviously that's there, and especially when you upgrade your spells, it gets even better. But you also want to use your Descending Dark or Desolate Dive to dodge. You know how when you use your Shade Cloak, you get some iframes which help you maneuver through projectiles without taking damage. Well, a lot of players don't know this, but Descending Dark and Dive also give you iframes. If you ever watch speedruns or challenge runners or anyone who's really good at the game, you'll notice that they use Desolate Dive a lot to dodge. It's a very good habit to get into, and it's an easy tell that you're not a casual Hollow Knight player when you start using spells to not only do damage but to dodge enemies. So this just allows for a super hyper aggressive playstyle, which is very good to get into. And of course you're going to take a lot of damage at the start when you start using your soul for spells and damage instead of purely healing, but it is a learning curve. Once you get over that, it's going to be impossible for you to play without spellcasting. This nicely leads into my next point, which is charms. So obviously during your first playthrough, you don't know the game yet, you're scared, you're playing slow, you're using a lot of charms that are good, like Quick Focus and Wayward Compass is fucking OP apparently. But when you have gone through the game at least once, you kinda wanna get away from those charms and start using more aggressive charms. The ones that everyone will recommend you, and that I recommend because of my point about spells, is Shaman Stone. You start the game with 3 notches, and Shaman Stone costs 3 notches to use. So it's a charm that you can get super early on and start using super soon. And that's kind of what speedrunners do. In any percent no major glitches speedrun of Hollow Knight, they just get Shaman Stone. Because it's so much easier to do damage with that than upgrading your nail, and it's a good way to get into the habit of spellcasting. But rather than relying on charms like Shape of Un and Quick Focus and Deep Focus, you know, Lifeblood Charms. Don't get me wrong, they're all good. Just to practice, try just using offensive charms. Try using Mark of Pride. Try using Quick Slash, Unbreakable Strength. Try using Shaman Stone, Soul Eater, so you get more soul, but not to heal, to deal more damage. Switching up your charms can be a really good way to improve at the game. Not just because you're trying new builds, but because you're trying objectively better builds. And it's a good way to step out of your comfort zone. One little pitfall I found myself when I was playing Hollow Knight for the first time is, even at my subsequent playthroughs, I would just stick with what I was good with, right? Which was usually a lot of charms built around healing and dodging and defense. But then slowly I started breaking out of that shell and started going offensive, and now it's just impossible to play without it because of how fast everything goes. This tip is for late game, so if you're struggling in late game, especially in Pantheons and stuff, a little trick I found was, obviously you want to go down to Hall of Gods and practice, but try practicing on the Ascended difficulty. This is for two reasons. Reason number one, it discourages you to just face tank bosses and actually learn their patterns and learn to maneuver around how they do damage. And second of all, if you can beat them Ascended, then that will really translate into beating them normally when you're facing them in the Pantheon, because in the Pantheon you have the pressure of starting all over from the start, right? So to get over that fear is a good way to just practice on Ascended. Especially for bosses like Pure Vessel and Nail Sage Sly, you wanna just learn them in Ascended. Do not face tank, okay? The first thing you need to do is stop face tanking damage in Hollow Knight. I used to play like that, and every new player I see, they also play like that, where they're either too scared to go in and do damage, and then when they finally do damage, they get hit and they panic. So instead of backing away or like reapproaching the fight, they just keep spamming hit, hoping that they would kill the enemy before the enemy kills them. And 9 out of 10 times, that does not work on bosses. You get fucking shit on for doing that. The game's very first boss, False Knight, is very brilliantly designed, assuming you fight False Knight first before Gruzmother, of course. The boss does not give you soul for hitting it, right? When it's fighting, because it has an armor, it doesn't give you soul. That discourages players from just face tanking damage and then healing it when they knock the boss down, right? It completely discourages that playstyle, which is the game's way of telling you to stop doing it. Even the smaller versions of False Knight, these little guys who are meant to teach you the False Knight boss fight, they do double damage, which is crazy at the start of the game because you only have 5 health, right? Again, it's to discourage face tanking. You won't be able to kill them with a base nail by just tanking all the damage. So a very good habit to get into is take your fights more methodically, right? Think about the boss patterns, think about what they're doing, and learn to dodge each attack and learn your windows of opportunity. You want to punish their attacks, not get punished for attacking the boss yourself. And what's funny is, players subconsciously already do this, but they only do it for healing. Every time you're in a boss fight, you will subconsciously realize, oh, you know, this is the perfect opportunity to heal, this is when I can heal. But try to take that a bit further and think in terms of, this is where I can do massive damage, this is where I can do damage with spells. Oh, when the boss comes here, maybe I can do Descending Dark to use the iframes not only to dodge the attack, but to do damage as well. So take the fight as a fight, not just a button mashing experience, and especially with Hollow Knight, it's super helpful because you don't have complicated combos like in a game like God of War, for example. And that's what I love about Souls-like game as well, like Elden Ring and Dark Souls, is in the end, you don't have to pull off some crazy combo maneuver on your controller. You're simply using attack buttons, and the whole gameplay is learning the patterns of the bosses and knowing when to dodge and knowing when to go in for a hit. And playing like that also makes the game so much more fun. A quick rundown of everything we talked about. I don't know what order I put that in the video, but I'm just going to give you a really quick summary, okay? Number 1, we quick cast, we don't do regular cast, change that button to a face button. You want to always quick cast, it's objectively better. You want to use a lot of spells rather than use saving the soul to heal. You want to be aggressive, use spells. Also use spells to dodge, like Descending Dark, use it for iframes. You want to use better charms. You want to stop relying on charms that give you defensive bonuses like healing and stuff, and instead try those charm notches for something offensive. That's usually helps. Try practicing bosses on Ascended difficulty for late game. This prevents you from doing stupid mistakes and just cheesing the boss. And once you can beat a boss at Ascended, it makes it that much easier to beat it normally when you're doing it in a Pantheon. It prevents 5th point, which is face tanking. Do not face tank in Hollow Knight. Learn patterns, play more methodically and with more thought. And all of these tips combined, of course after a lot of practice, this won't change your gameplay in like 30 minutes. You will find yourself elevated from a very basic casual player to somewhat of an intermediate level. Most importantly, you'll start to look and appreciate this game in a completely different mindset. Oh well, I've been rambling on for a while. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Whatever, I hope it was somewhat helpful. And if anyone else has more tips, please write them down in the comments for new people, alright? And knowing my upload schedule, I will see you whenever I see you.